Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I'm really glad you're joining me today because we're going to unpack a story that is, honestly, quite heartbreaking, but also incredibly necessary to talk about. We're looking at a short film script about a young tightrope walker, but right off the bat, I want to be clear. We aren't just breaking down a story about a street performance. We're using this narrative to take a hard look at our own modern society, specifically the apathy we so often show toward the struggles of others. We live in an era where literally everything is captured on a screen. So we really have to ask ourselves, when we watch someone out there fighting to survive, are we actually seeing them as a human being, or have they just become another piece of content to swipe past?
Okay, let's jump right into this by focusing on a pretty stark number, 14. This isn't just a random statistic. This is the actual age of the poor girl stepping onto the tightrope in our story. By immediately hitting us with her age, the source material forces us to confront the devastating reality of child poverty. I mean, think about it. 14 is an age we normally associate with middle school, hanging out with friends, and just the general safety of childhood, right? But instead, we're looking at a child who has been thrust into this terrifying role of being her family's primary breadwinner, taking on extreme physical risks that most adults wouldn't even dream of attempting.
And that brings us to the setting, which is just so visceral. Picture this sensory overload. You're in a chaotic, intensely noisy city marketplace. You've got the shouting of vendors, the relentless blaring of vehicle horns echoing everywhere. And right there, smack in the middle of all this madness, there's a thin rope tied high up above the hard, unforgiving pavement, suspended right between two large buses. It's quite literally a life-or-death spectacle unfolding above a bustling street. This environment is absolutely crucial because all that overwhelming noise and chaos, it serves as a perfect metaphor for the noise of our own modern lives. It's the kind of noise that so often drowns out the quiet, desperate struggles happening right in front of our faces.
Now, consider the sheer physical danger she's putting herself in. She slowly steps out onto that thin rope. She's wearing torn, old clothes. She's completely barefoot, feeling the harsh friction of that rope right against her skin. She's clutching this long bamboo stick just to keep her balance. And if that wasn't hard enough, to add a layer of nearly impossible difficulty, she is balancing a clay pot on her head. The script notes that there's visible fear in her eyes. I mean, of course there is, but she pushes forward anyway. Why? Well, because the reality of her family starving is far greater and far more terrifying than her very real fear of falling.
So let's move into our first major theme, Section 1, the apathy of the crowd.
Notice the agonizing contrast that starts playing out here. Down below, hundreds of people were standing around watching her. But how exactly are they watching? Well, some are actually laughing at the spectacle, basically treating it like a cheap circus act. Some are just watching in this kind of passive, frozen shock. But most notably, and this hits so close to home for our digital age, many are simply recording videos on their phones. They've essentially placed a digital barrier between themselves and the human being struggling for her life up above them. They're treating a desperate, terrifying fight for survival as mere content for their feeds, completely detached from the reality of her pain.
Which leads us to a really uncomfortable but important question. Why do we watch without helping? This forces all of us to pause and examine our own default instincts as spectators today. When exactly did we become a society that instinctively reaches for a camera before reaching out a hand to help? This young girl is completely isolated from the crowd in her moment of extreme vulnerability, and the crowd has totally detached themselves from her humanity, reducing her entire life to a fleeting, viral spectacle.
Which brings us to Section 2, the hidden weight of hunger.
Look at the massive, heartbreaking disconnect here. On one side, you have the spectator reality. People are laughing, recording, swiping, just mindlessly consuming. But on the other side, you have the subject reality. This girl hasn't eaten since yesterday. She has a sick father at home who physically cannot work. She has little siblings waiting for her. So we've got a crowd that is hungry for entertainment juxtaposed right against a family that is literally starving for basic food. It's a profound, chilling indictment of our collective lack of empathy.
And this is the agonizing question echoing in her home right at that exact moment. Will she bring home some money today? Every single careful step she takes across that high rope isn't for applause, it isn't for likes or viral fame, it's to answer that one question. This thought completely raises the stakes of her performance from a simple street act to an absolute matter of life and death for multiple people sitting in a dark, empty room just waiting for her to come back.
Let's move to Section 3, the fall that changed everything.
Step by careful step, she makes her way across the sky. The tension is palpable. But then, suddenly, the environment just turns completely against her. Out of nowhere, a strong wind begins to blow, sweeping violently through the marketplace. That thin rope she's standing on starts shaking badly.
She is completely exposed to the elements up there, and in a terrifying instant, her fragile control over the situation is just stolen right from her.
And then, in a fraction of a second, the absolute worst-case scenario happens. She loses her balance entirely and plummets, crashing down onto the hard pavement of the marketplace below. The spectacle is instantly over. The harsh reality of gravity and consequence has hit.
Now witness how the crowd reacts to the immediate aftermath of her fall. People scream in fear. Blood is visibly flowing from her severely injured foot. Now, human instinct finally kicks in for a few people. Some do actually rush toward her to help. Some remain frozen, standing there silently in horror. But the most chilling reality, the absolute peak of the modern apathy highlighted by the source script, is that some people still keep recording videos. I mean, literally, there's a bleeding, broken child on the ground, and for some, the urge to capture the tragedy on film is somehow stronger than the basic human urge to offer aid. It's wild.
Lying there, crying in immense physical pain, she absolutely refuses to quit. She delivers this gut-punching reality check to the crowd gathering around her. She says, "I cannot stop. If I return home without money today, my parents will sleep hungry." This right here completely shatters the illusion for the spectators. She isn't an acrobat looking for gasps. She's a desperate child looking for a meal. She knows that a broken foot is painful, sure, but starvation is fatal.
And that brings us to Section 4, the cost of survival.
This part is just the true definition of resilience against impossible odds. Even with blood flowing from her feet, fighting through what has to be unimaginable agony, she slowly stands right back up. She picks up her bamboo stick once more, and incredibly, she climbs right back onto that shaking rope. The source notes that all the fear is gone from her eyes now. There's simply no room for fear anymore. There is only the primal, desperate fight to save her family.
And finally, notice the powerful shift in the crowd. First, her heartbreaking reality completely destroys their detachment. The phone screens lower. Second, genuine empathy takes over. You see tears filling the eyes of the people in the market. They finally truly see her. And third, they transition from passive observation to active participation. They stop merely watching the tragedy unfold, and they start intervening, giving her the money she so desperately needs to survive.
The crowd actually starts stepping forward. 10 rupees here, 50 there, some are even handing over 100 rupees. These varying amounts of money represent a massive, tangible shift in the behavior of the people below. They finally recognize their role not as a detached audience, but as a human community. This sudden influx of support ensures that, against all odds, tonight, her family will finally have food to eat.
Up on the rope, looking down at this sudden outpouring of humanity, tears start rolling down the little girl's face. But you know, these are incredibly complex tears for a 14-year-old to have to shed. They are tears of sharp physical pain from her fall, tears of the immense, exhausting struggle of her daily existence, but ultimately they are tears of relief and happiness. The physical and emotional toll on her is immense, but she's done it. She has achieved her desperate goal.
And that brings us to the final thought of the source material, which reads, "The greatest pain in this world is when someone risks their life just to fight hunger." I really want to leave you with this provocative thought today. It challenges every single one of us. It asks us to look at our own lives, to look at the glowing screens in our hands, and to vow to never let our desire for a compelling spectacle blind us to the very real, very raw pain of fellow human beings who are just out there fighting to survive. Let's remember to put the phones down sometimes and actually lift each other up. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.